Welcome to this session on qualitative data analysis. The main goal of qualitative analysis is to develop meaningful categories that help to answer your overall research question. In contrast to quantitative data analysis, there is more subjectivity in the process of qualitative data analysis. The process can vary depending on the researcher conducting the analysis, and this is because as qualitative researchers, we bring ourselves into the process to varying degrees. We are the ones who are naming people's experiences and then creating categories to explain the meaning of people's statements. Despite this subjectivity, there are still a number of procedures that can bring a framework for structuring this process. The overall process of qualitative data analysis is often described as a cycle, a spiral, and also an iterative process or a repetitive process. The spiral metaphor represents the process the researcher uses in reading and then rereading transcripts and developing initial codes and categories that are then refined and adapted through the process of thinking about the meaning of the data. This image provides one representation of this process. The bottom of the spiral contains the process of data collection, which signifies that the analysis process in qualitative research is ongoing and begins as you are collecting data. This process also includes transcribing your interview or focus group data. During this initial stage, researchers are thinking about what the data might mean, and these initial interpretations are the beginning of the process. On the left side of the image are terms that reflect the specific procedures that qualitative researchers often use to analyze data, and on the right side of the image are examples of those procedures. And at the end of the spiral is the account, which reflects your final analysis that appears in your written report. Data management is the first step in the qualitative data analysis process and includes organizing your data in a way that facilitates the analysis process. This process can either be complicated or simple, depending on how much data you have and your research questions. For example, interviews and focus groups produce transcripts, which are audio and document computer files that need to be organized, or text segments that need to be organized. In ethnographic research, data may be researchers' field notes or video files which would need to be organized and managed in different ways for analysis. Reading and memoing is the second step in qualitative analysis. This task involves the initial process of first reading the transcripts and starting to make notes or memos about the possible meaning of the data. Memos are notes about your ideas, reflections, and insights about what the data mean, and this is sometimes referred to as coding, which refers to marking the data with notes and category names. Memoing should occur throughout analysis, and in the initial stages of analysis, this process is sometimes referred to as open coding, which reflects the stage of preliminary exploration of the themes. In the Smith and Firth article, this process is referred to as data management, which includes reading the transcript several times, identifying preliminary codes or categories for passages of the text, refining categories, developing a coding matrix, and assigning codes to passages of the text. Describing, classifying, and interpreting is the third step in the qualitative analysis process. In this stage in the process, the researcher continues to revise and refine the initial memos and open codes. From this process, categories or names are developed to represent the ideas about the meaning of the data. This is the process of developing the themes that will be the results of the research. Initial open codes are grouped together into broader categories that reflect the meaning of the concept. The Smith and Firth article describes this process as descriptive accounts, which includes further refinement of the initial themes or categories and identification of connections between the themes so that a holistic picture of the phenomenon under study is obtained. The following is a list of additional guidelines for qualitative analysis. First, select a process to sort segments of the text within the transcript into categories. When using documents on a computer, it is often helpful to use a highlighting tool or a comments tool to select text and mark it with memos, codes, and themes. You can also print out the documents and mark them with pens. Second, as you are coding data, one segment of text may end up in two categories, and some text may not be categorized at all. A related guideline is to look for sub-themes within the categories and also to identify any contradictions within the themes you are creating. Also, through the process of coding, categories can be combined when they have similar meaning. And last, expect to code across interview questions and participants. This is an example of what the initial coding process might look like. This is from an interview with a social worker working in a voluntary services unit of a child welfare system. The interviewer asks about factors that help social workers in the process of referring families to services. The participant describes a challenge for parents who do not speak English in calling the agency and initiating services. The participant then goes on to describe how they address this challenge by connecting the parent with the service provider during a home visit. The notes on the side indicate the initial codes that I developed for this passage of text. The process then continues with the other transcripts from the research, and commonalities between transcripts are identified as themes. The fourth step of qualitative data analysis is representing and visualizing, which is when the researcher identifies relationships and patterns between themes and explains and represents these themes in relation to the larger body of knowledge on the topic. This is the stage in which the researcher presents the findings in written form, table form, or in a visual figure, and then discusses the meaning of the findings in relation to what is already known about this topic. Quotes are used to represent the themes. In the Smith and Firth article, they refer to this stage as explanatory accounts, which includes further refinement of the relationships between themes or the patterns of themes, comparing and contrasting these themes with the original data to ensure accurate interpretation, and relating the themes back to theories or previous literature on the topic and possible implications. For example, themes in qualitative research may cluster into hierarchical category systems so that one larger category includes several small subcategories. This figure represents the themes that were identified in a qualitative research study that explored how public child welfare and mental health systems collaborate with each other. The main theme category is factors that impede collaboration between the two systems. Interview and focus groups with staff in both systems suggested three main barriers to collaboration: system divisions, budget stressors, and workload stressors. And then within those three subcategories were additional subcategories that are represented in the figure. Grouping these themes into this hierarchical category system and representing it with a visual figure helps to show the meaning of people's responses and the connections between the themes identified. This figure represents another way that themes in qualitative research may be connected because it shows how one theme may lead to another. Participants describe both staff burnout and staff turnover as a workload stressor that interferes with collaboration between the child welfare and mental health systems. When examining how participants talked about these stressors, the process was often described as one in which staff gradually became burned out and then decided to leave the organization, resulting in turnover and the need to hire new staff, which then caused the collaborative relationship between systems to suffer. So another way to represent the relationships between themes is shown in this figure, in which both burnout and turnover are shown as workload stressors that impede collaboration. However, the relationship is further explained by showing that burnout is considered to lead to turnover. Quotes or field notes are used in the final stage of analysis in order to illustrate the themes or relationships between themes. For example, this is a quote used to illustrate the influence of differing professional orientations on cross-system collaboration between child welfare and mental health professionals. Mental health comes from a different perspective and different training, and we are coming from our perspective, and sometimes it is difficult to get the two perspectives together. There are different ways to establish trustworthiness of qualitative data. Two researchers can independently review data, agree on the codes to be used, and then code the data and calculate an inter-rater reliability coefficient. More typically, two researchers will review transcripts and then discuss their ideas about the themes and discrepancies in their ideas. Differences are discussed until agreement on the themes is reached. In addition, researchers will often share preliminary findings with participants or other key stakeholders to check and make sure that the meanings of the researchers have developed are correct. Welcome to this session on qualitative data analysis. The main goal of qualitative analysis is to develop meaningful depending on the researcher conducting the analysis, and this is because as qualitative researchers, we bring ourselves into the process to varying degrees. We are the ones who are naming people's experiences and then creating categories to explain. Data analysis is often described as a cycle, a spiral, and also an iterative process or a repetitive process. The spiral metaphor represents the process the researcher gains the meaning of people's statements. Despite this subjectivity, there are still a number of procedures that can bring a framework for structuring this process. The overall process of qualitative data categories that help to answer your overall research question. In contrast to quantitative data analysis, there is more subjectivity in the process of qualitative data analysis. The process can vary